Hello, I'm Ray Valiant Gillette, Curator and Folklife Program Director at the Ward Museum, and I welcome you to Episode 4 of Delmarva Cooks. When people talk about Maryland seafood, blue crabs are typically at the top of the list. But ask locals on the Eastern Shore what sets us apart from the rest of the state when it comes to gifts from the sea, and the answer is easy: oysters. The peninsula of Delmarva is unique in its location and geography. In addition to having the Chesapeake Bay to its west and the Atlantic Ocean to its east, the shore has multiple rivers, sounds, and smaller bays dotted throughout. This is where some of the most desired and delectable oysters in the world are found. There are two standard ways to harvest these oysters. One is tonging, where large metal tongs are employed off a deck boat to gather oysters a scoop at a time. The other is dredging, which I had the pleasure of documenting while aboard one of Deal Island's historic skipjacks, the Kathryn. Captain David Whitelock and crew spent the early morning hours harvesting bushels of oysters using this technique. A dredge is basically a metal rake attached to a large metal mesh basket, and these baskets are lowered into the waters of Tangier Sound to drag along the bottom as the skipjack sails. Once they are pulled up, keepers are sorted out, and smaller oysters are returned to the water. Then the dredge returns to the water of the Sound again and again until the quota of the boat is made. I then head to Pocomoke City to make a family favorite with my cousin and former First Lady of Pocomoke, Laura Morrison. It's still a debate where this oyster pudding recipe originated, but this version was a signature dish of my grandmother's and remains a staple at holiday dinners and family celebrations. There really is no wrong way to prepare an oyster, whether it's freshly shucked raw out of the shell, or something like an Oysters Rockefeller or oyster stew. The possibilities are truly endless. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Delmarva Cooks featuring the oyster, and invite you to share a family recipe with us.
My name is Laura Morrison. I am Ray's cousin. I have been living in Pocomoke City my entire life and grew up around a lot of good Delmarva cooks. Today, we are going to be making my Aunt Ethel, which is Ray's grandmother's, escalloped oysters. Some people call it oyster pudding. Some people call it just a phenomenal oyster casserole. She was my great Aunt Ethel, and she was not only in relation my great Aunt Ethel, but she was just a great aunt. So we're going to be making her phenomenal oyster casserole because she was a phenomenal cook. And Aunt Ethel and Uncle Paul always had a family Christmas dinner the night before Christmas Eve. It was always the 23rd of December, and we would go to their house, and she would always make this as one of her dishes. My dad always did Thanksgiving, so I would always bring this casserole to Thanksgiving dinner, and then when he passed away, Thanksgiving became my gig. So actually that's probably been well more than 10 years ago, probably 15 to 20 years ago. So all of our ingredients are laid out, and the first thing we're going to do is put some butter in our pan. We have 1 onion chopped. We have 4 stalks of celery that are chopped. And we have about 6 ounces of mushrooms that are chopped. So we're going to saute all of those in butter. Everything's better with a little butter on it, or a lot of butter. I want them to be flavorfully salty, but I also don't want too much salt because the oysters are salty. I'm going to finish buttering our casserole dish. We do not use Pam. Aunt Ethel said the dish had to be buttered. So we are Ethelizing it and not Pamming it. And then to that, we're going to add 1.5 quarts of oysters. So the first thing we do when we're layering it in our casserole dish, we're also using Ritz crackers. You can use Ritz crackers or you can use club crackers. Either of them have a buttery finish, and I use a sleeve for each layer. So I have just already smashed all of those, and in each of these containers I have a sleeve. So our first layer, and then we're going to dot this with butter. There will be 3 layers of Ritz crackers and 2 layers of the oyster mixture. So our first layer of the oyster mixture will then go on top. This is great for Thanksgiving, but I've also served it at Easter, and it's also delicious with like roast beef. It's good with that as well. And then we take our heavy cream and we pour it around the outside edge, steering clear as best we can of our top layer of Ritz crackers so that they don't get soggy. And then we pop it in a 400-degree oven for 20 minutes.